Now that you know a little bit about formulas and functions, you're going to want to start looking at some of the functions that you can perform or some of the functions you can take action on. Well, the reality is Excel has a lot of functions, and most of those functions probably aren't going to apply to what you do every day. There are a handful of functions that everyone should know. These functions have a broad general use that can apply to almost any industry and organization. So let's take some time and explore some of the functions that'll help you out. So for this lesson, we're going to use a file in the project folder. Go to Lesson 5, and the file is called Useful Excel Functions. In the previous lesson, you learned about the sum function. Now, the sum function is a math function, and it's not listed here. The sum function is a given. That is probably one of the most useful functions you'll find. And again, as a reminder, if you go to the Formulas tab and click on AutoSum, the sum function is listed right here. So here we're going to go through a few other math functions that'll be beneficial to you. The first one here is the int function. The int function is basically the integer function, and this function rounds a number down to the nearest whole number. And let's go through an example of what the int function can do for you. In this table, I've got 4 people listed, I've got their birthdays listed, and today's date. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get their age. So I've put a simple formula in here, and if you look at the formula bar, you'll see what it is. It's D15 minus C15, which is these two cells, D15 minus C15, and then I'm taking that number and I'm dividing it by 365.25. The reason I'm doing that is because D15 minus C15 gives me a big number, for example. That's basically the number of days, 10,048 days. And I can divide this 365.25, and that gives me this person's approximate age. Now, 365.25 is basically the number of days in a year counting leap years. Now, you can see the problem here. The problem is I've got 27.50992, 2641, 205, 27.70979. So these aren't ideal. So what I'm going to do is, in this next example, this is basically step 2, here I've essentially eliminated the decimal points. And I simply did that by using some of the number formatting here. Let me go ahead and undo what I just did. The problem is, the first person here says now that he's 28 years old. Well, he's not 28 years old. He's actually 27.5 something years. This next person here says it's 26, and that's correct. So as you can see, the next 2 people here have ages that are not correct. 28, he's not 28, he's actually 27. And this person says he's 26, and he's actually 25.6. So reducing the number of decimal places didn't work for us. It's actually giving us incorrect answers. So instead of doing that, we can use the int function. The int function allows us to wrap the number in an int formula, and that int formula is going to trim all of the decimal points and only capture the whole number. So let me simplify this for you. I'm going to break this formula down into parts. I'm going to say first equals today's date minus the birth date. That gives me 10,048. Now I'm going to divide this number, 10,048, by 365.25. That's a number of days in an average year, including leap years. Okay, so I get 27.50992, which is correct. Now I'm going to wrap this particular number in the int function. So what I've done here is I've entered in the function name, int, open parentheses, and I've passed it the one argument that it requires, which is a number, and then I've closed it out with a closed parentheses. And that gives me the 27. So these component parts that I just typed in, subtracting today's date from the birth date, taking that number and dividing it by 365, and then wrapping that formula into an int function, are all being done at the same time in this particular cell. I'm subtracting the date from the birthday, dividing that by 365.25, and then wrapping that answer into the int function.